I want to talk about personal projects and how they relate to finding your first software development job. I see a lot of people kind of struggling to get their first job, and they get hung up on the years experience required, because usually it's like a blanket, 2 years experience for, I would say, most jobs, regardless of like, how entry level they really are. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, if I get an internship, that's like what, 3 or 4 months maybe, and maybe longer, but it's not, 2 years, you know what I mean? So you can't just fill that with like 5 or 6 internships to get that experience. So, what do? Well, in my opinion, you should fill that gap of experience with personal projects. A couple ways to do this. One way is to create for yourself an LLC. An LLC is going to give you something official that you can put your name behind. So you're creating a company that you're the sole proprietor of. You own it, call it whatever you want. Register it as a legitimate LLC, get all the paperwork in order. Then you have now a company. And then what you should do is create personal projects and put them under the umbrella of your LLC, because all of a sudden now it's legitimized, right? You've created this thing, whether you're in school, after school, whatever it is, you've created this thing where you not only have set up a company to build your personal projects under, but you've also created a potential area where if you do in fact make money from your personal projects, usually through advertisements or whatever. So if you put Google ads on your website and you drive somehow a lot of traffic from social media onto your site and you make a few $100, well, you can put that that will go back into your LLC. So it's a legitimate company, and it's something you can talk about. And the reason I suggest doing that is, not only is a good experience going through that process and just seeing, okay, what does it look like to create an LLC, but it's also a good experience because it gets you thinking about, how do I make this legitimate? How do I take my personal project that I'm working on for the sole reason to get me employed? Well, how do I think about it in a broader sense? How do I think about it in a more like reliable, this could affect my life sense, like if it actually turns into something. And the way I went about it, to kind of bring it back to what I did, is I made an LLC, and then I made 2 iOS applications under that LLC I made. And I had to do some like website stuff as well. So I had a website, I had the LLC, had 2 mobile apps that were in the Apple App Store, and I had a couple other things, but they were all under that. And I put that all on my resume in the project section. And it was brought up in my first interview at my first job. And it was something that stood out because it's not that common, I would say, not compared to like, your typical, okay, you're doing, XYZ leak code problems. You can put that in your resume. You can put like, okay, I know how to, like, I don't know, invert a binary search tree, or, I can make a CRUD application or something like that. Those things are all good, and I think you should include those, but you need to take it the next like level. You need to add something to that, or put something behind that to legitimize it a little more. And not because you're trying to, say, oh, my stuff is the best. Not at all. Because all you're trying to do is get your foot in the door. To get your first job, you're just trying to get somebody to say, okay, let's give this guy a call. Let's give this girl a call. Let's give this person a call because we saw something on their resume that stood out to us, and let's just get them on the phone. Because once you get your foot in the door in the first interview, then that's your chance to talk about, okay, here's what I did, here's my thoughts, my ideas about it, here's why I made this in the first place, because I'm interested in this technology. Here's how I use WebSockets in this part to provide real-time streaming to this. Talk about it at length and as much technical detail as possible, because that's really going to show your ability to make something and problem solve and troubleshoot. And that's what they want to see, right? I know that solving leak code problems is real important depending on where you work, because sometimes, unfortunately, that's all the interviews are, is there those like technical interviews that just ask you, hey, write this algorithm, or write this, sorting algorithm, or manipulate this string, or do whatever it is. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of places do that, but not every place does that. And some places only ask you about like behavioral and situational problems. And I think that that's where the personal projects kind of fit into. They give you that experience to talk through that. So honestly, what you should include is problems that you're running into, because problems make it real. Like if you're running into a problem with throughput, your backend API can't handle how much data you're throwing at it, that should be a talking point. And you should talk about, okay, what are some strategies that I can implement to work around that, or to offload some stress on my API? What can I do? That gives you a chance to maybe talk about introducing load balancers, introducing some kind of deployment strategy. Not that you actually did that, but just it gets you a door to introduce that kind of discussion into the conversation, into the interview. And so when you're thinking about, okay, what personal project should I make, right? That's a common question people ask. I honestly try not to get stuck on that question too much. Try not to make the perfect application in one go, because let's face it, you're probably not going to. And it doesn't really matter, honestly, what the project is or does. All that matters, at least for getting this first job, is creating a project that uses a broad range of technologies in a really creative and good way. Not because you need all those technologies, but just it gives you experience using them in a realistic sense, if that makes sense. So you can make a website, you can make all like the create, read, update, delete operations. You might hear that as a CRUD application. You can make that so you can read data from a database, you can create entries, you can update them, you can do all that stuff, and you can make a nice list. But then what? What is your list doing? Is it listing out data from a public API somewhere, maybe like, weather or something like that? You need to think about, okay, well, what do you want to make? What do you want to add into this to give it your own personal touch? And what do you want to add into it to show your creativity in this? Like, what problem are you trying to solve? Not because you're actually trying to make something legitimate, which you might be, but you're trying to introduce technology to talk about. And I can't stress that enough. If the job you're applying to uses, I don't know, queues, well, put a queue into your personal project. If the job uses, I don't know, REST APIs, you better make sure that you're experienced with REST APIs in your personal project. If it uses SOAP, use that. If it just uses many things that you can, especially the things that you see on the job listing, right? You should be looking at those, and you, at this point when you're applying, hopefully you've decided on like what kind of specialization you want to go down to, whether that's .NET, Java, whatever it is. You'll start to notice a lot of overlap, right? Like when I'm looking for, or when I've looked for .NET jobs, it's a big enough umbrella that eventually you'll start seeing the same stuff pop up, right? Like .NET is a web framework. Obviously it uses C#, but you're going to notice like, okay, Entity Framework, Dapper, Azure, AWS. You're going to notice, I don't know, Razor, Blazor, IIS, a bunch of things that you're going to, start picking up on, and you're going to see those pop up in different job listings. So whatever specialty that you're trying to go for, just find like what the core things that employers look for and make a project that builds around those. Not saying that you have to do every single one of them, but at least make a project that you can show like somewhat working, and maybe make a video of it, put it on YouTube, and then maybe make a write-up of it on Medium, or maybe link your GitHub, or just something to expose the fact that you've made this and talk about it. If you want to make a personal portfolio website, you can do that, but I wouldn't make that like your sole focus, right? Because your portfolio website should showcase something you're creating, in my opinion. I didn't make my own website. I just used Wix, and I just, drag and dropped elements, and I just linked all my other stuff on there. And that worked for me. Now, obviously, if you have the time and you can build one yourself, go for it. But I would think about a project that allows you to create something that you're interested in, but also create something that gives you the opportunity to read a little bit more niche topics that are a little more obscure. And whatever that is, whatever topic you're interested in, I don't know, let's say you want to make an application that is used for, let's try to think of an idea right now, is used for building desks, right? You can make a stand-up desk, you can make a sitting desk. You have to define the dimensions. You have to define what the desk is going to be used for, what colors are the desk going to be, what room is the desk going to be put in. These are all data points that you can capture, and you can make a or an app, website, whatever it is, that maybe you could create a virtual desk and then use augmented reality and put it into the room you're in, and then toggle the variables and have it update in real time. That's just one idea. Obviously, if you go on to like a Wayfair type website, you're going to see that functionality, but it doesn't matter because you're making it yourself just to get familiar with all these concepts and stuff. So honestly, just brainstorming things like that, sitting down for hours and hours thinking about it and reading about topics, papers, articles, books, anything you can read, just try. I spent hours and hours my senior year, both semesters, just working on personal projects and my stuff whenever I had time, because I knew that it was going to help me out after the fact. And I just, as much time as you can dedicate to it, I would try to. And obviously, I've been burnt out a lot just because it's inevitable that you're going to get burnt out working on personal projects. That's just how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. But to get your foot in the door, you got to put, some time and effort into making these things. And if you've done a whole lot of lead code stuff and you're only relying on that, maybe it's time to switch from that to make something a project. Just something that you're interested in and also you're passionate about, right? If you're really interested in programming and stuff like that, and you're just trying to get, the job, just give it a shot. And once you get the job, if you don't like your project, you don't have to touch it again because you got yourself a job. And then now you've gotten your foot in the door to start adding on to your, professional experience, if you want to call it that, because that's all it is, right? Everyone's just we're all just trying to get a job, right? We all need to make a living. So whatever it takes to get in the door to do that, I would say we have to do it. And for me, what worked was what I just talked about, the LLC, the more niche personal projects, including those as like the main section on the resume. Get rid of the about me sentences, replace that with personal projects, as much technical detail as possible, and then just try from there. And apply to 15, 20 at least jobs a day, at least. And then don't take any breaks, just keep applying and reaching out to people as whatever it takes, because all you need is one offer, and that's it. And then if you don't like personal projects after that, it doesn't matter because you might not need them. But when you go back to look, you might think, okay, well, wait a minute, I have this project, maybe I can just keep adding to it, and then it'll help me out for next time. If something happens, you never know, but it at least helps you get experience. And people don't get hung up on years experience. I don't think it's a good gauge anyway for how good you are as a developer at all. Just make what you like and go from there. I'll see you in the next one.